In this video, we'll start working on the adjectives. So we're still in document number 3, all types of phrases and clauses, and the adjectives have just one table, table 11, called adjective degree. So we're ready to import this. When I made the video about nouns and verbs, I said that before we can import the tables from this document, first we have to add the various forms in the lexicon. Like for the nouns, we added the plural form. For the verbs, we added the past tense form and the perfect and the participle, etc. Well, I just updated TBTA, so now we don't have to add these forms ourselves. Instead, when the software is importing one of these tables, when it sees a new form that it doesn't recognize, a new form that's not already in the lexicon, it will ask us if we want to add that form. So we no longer have to add, in this table, comparative and superlative. We no longer have to add those to the lexicon ourselves. We can just go and directly import this table. So let's go ahead and do that. This is document number 3, table number 11. Okay, do you want to add a new form named comparative to the lexicon for adjectives? Let's say yes. Do you want to add a new form named superlative to the lexicon for adjectives? We'll say yes. All of the selected tables were imported. Okay, so now when we come over here, we entered these stems a long time ago. We don't have any features, but we have two forms, comparative and superlative. We don't have any rules for these forms, so they're just empty columns right now. That's what we'll work on in this video. Before we start populating these columns, we need to add a feature. I've worked in roughly a dozen languages, and in every language we've needed a feature. I call it, let's say new feature, I call it type, the type of adjective. And the reason is there are different types of adjectives. There's colors and size and cardinal numbers and ordinal numbers. And every language will have their own preferred order for when we have multiple adjectives modifying the same noun. In English, we can say something like, John read many good, big, red books. Okay? So we have multiple adjectives. And if we put them in any other order, it will sound strange. So we need a way to put these adjective phrases in order. So we have a feature called type. The default value will be descriptive. Most adjectives will just call descriptive, like good or bad or etc. Let's have another one. These others are more specific. Color, size. Let's have cardinal number. Cardinal numbers are like 1, 2, 3, 4. Ordinal number. First, second, third, fourth. Let's have one for quantity. Quantity is like all or many. And then one more, I call it identity. I haven't been able to think of a better name. Identity is for like John and Mary read the same book, or John read the only book that was on the shelf. So same and only we'll call identity. Okay, so it used the default value, the first one, descriptive. Able is descriptive, afraid. Okay, all is quantity. Angry is descriptive, big. Okay, big is size. Good is descriptive, 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 descriptive. Hungry. Okay, many is quantity. Old is descriptive, 1 is a cardinal number. Proud, ready, red. Red is a color. Same as identity. Tall is descriptive. Third is an ordinal number. Cardinal number. True is descriptive. 20 is a cardinal number. And 2 is a cardinal number. Okay. So later in a subsequent video, our phrase structure rule for noun phrases will be able to put these adjectives in their proper order when multiple adjectives modify the same noun. So now we're ready to start populating these columns. So the comparative form, for most adjectives we add the suffix er, like angrier, bigger. This one we would say better, it's suppletive, but better, happier, hotter, hungrier. For some, like interested, we say more interested. We can't say interesteder. And the quantity adjectives, they don't have a comparative form. And the cardinal numbers, they don't have a comparative form. Let's go ahead and write a rule that will add the suffix er for the comparative form. So we'll say form rules. Grammar wizard, add the suffix er, comparative. This will be in the comparative. Okay, we actually need a feature. Okay, right now we only have one feature for adjectives, the one we just added called type. We need to add another feature called something like comparative formation. Some will take er, some will take the word more, but we haven't done that yet. We'll still save this rule, but while we're here, let's say bigger, taller, etc. But right now, since we don't have that feature, this rule will apply to all of the adjectives. We can see that. Okay, see that? Abler, afraider, aller. So we don't want that. Let's go back to our features, and we'll add a new feature. We'll call it comparative formation. And for most adjectives, it's the suffix er. For some adjectives, it's the word more. And then for some adjectives, it's not applicable. Okay. So, abler. He is more able. That sounds better to me. More able. Afraider, he is more afraid. More. All is not applicable. Okay. Angrier, bigger, better, happier, hotter, hungrier, more interested. Many is not applicable. Older, one is not applicable. Prouder, readier. He is readier. He is more ready. Some of these, either one sounds tolerable. I think John is more ready than Bill. John is readier than Bill. John is more ready. John is more ready. I'm going to go with more for now. Redder, same, is not applicable. Taller, third, is not applicable. 3 is not applicable. True, truer, that's truer, that's more true. That's truer, that's more true. I'm going to go with more. Okay, 20, not applicable. 2 is not applicable. Okay, so now we can go back to our forms. And let's specify that this rule only applies to adjectives that have a comparative formation value of er. And when we do that, so now we have angrier. Okay, we need a spelling rule. We need a morphophonemic rule. But now, okay, this one is morphophonemic. Or, sorry, suppletive. Let's just type it in. Better. Okay, now as soon as I did that, there's a suppletive forms rule. TBTA writes these for us automatically. So you don't need to write these. You do need to keep in mind that these always need to be the last one in a group, which it is right now. Okay, we need another spelling rule. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our spelling rules. Let's add the rule that changes a Y to an I. That's a morphophonemic rule. When an adjective ends with Y, and it begins with ER, applies to comparative form, new end of stem is I, and the suffix is still ER. Okay, this will go in the comparative form. Okay. Y will change to an I before an ER. And let's enter some examples. Angrier. Happier. Hungrier. Okay. So if we do that now, okay. Angrier, happier, hungrier. Those look good. Let's write another rule, a morphophonemic rule. If a stem ends with CVC, then we need to reduplicate the final consonant before we add ER. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, Grammar Wizard can't write morphophonemic rules like that that do reduplication. So we need to do this one ourselves. So let's double click here. stem ends with CVC, we duplicate the final consonant. This is morphophonemic. It'll apply to a suffix. The included suffixes are comparative. Okay, the stem will change. We want this to be reduplication. And as soon as we check this box, now we have a drop list here. And we'll say reduplicate last character of stem. We want to specify our stem with phonetic features. Now, as soon as I check that option, these 5 cells now represent the final 5 characters of the stem, of the adjective stem. We only need the final 3. So this one is the final stem, final character in the stem. We want this one to be a consonant. We want this one to be a vowel. We want this one to be a consonant. Okay, so if the stem ends with CVC, we'll reduplicate the final character. The suffix doesn't change. The suffix is still ER. Okay? So let's enter some examples. Bigger, redder, okay, angrier, bigger, better, happier, hotter, hungrier, older, prouder, redder, taller. Okay, those look good. Now some of these don't have a comparative form, like all. Others take the word more. So let's write a rule for that. Grammar Wizard can do that. We're going to add a word. So right here, add word. And the word is more. This will apply to the comparative form. Add word. Okay, we only want this rule. We want this rule to only apply to the adjectives that take more. So we'll check that. More interested. What else? More afraid. Okay. Okay, you've just entered a new constituent into adjective phrases called comparative. Do you want to edit your first adjective phrase for a structure rule? Okay, remember, we just added a separate word, and we gave it a part of speech called comparative. That was the label. That label is the part of speech. And so the software saw that we entered a new word into the adjective phrase that's not there yet, so it will let us modify our adjective phrase. So let's say yes, and it puts it right there at the top with the example more. So let's put this down here. Right there is fine. Pre-adjective, those are, we don't have an example yet. That was there by default. So let's put the comparative there, okay? And make our suppletive rules last. Okay. Okay, more afraid. Okay, now right here in the lexicon, the word more comes after the stem. Don't be concerned about that. When we start generating text, and we want the word more to precede more afraid, more able, more true, the phrase structure rules will always determine the final constituent order. And we'll write a phrase structure rule for noun phrases that will we'll write a phrase structure rule for adjective phrases that will position these words, this word more, before the stem. So here, the software just puts them after the stem, but don't be concerned about that. Okay, so more able, more afraid, all doesn't take one. More interested, many doesn't take one doesn't take one, same, third, 3. Okay, so those look good. Now we're ready to start working on our superlatives. And for most superlatives, we take the stem and add est. So let's write a rule. Grammar Wizard can do that. Add the suffix est, superlative. This will be in the superlative. And we want this rule to apply to, okay, we're going to need another feature called superlative formation, an est. So we'll say cancel for now. We'll go ahead and write the rule. Some examples are biggest, happiest, tallest. Okay? Right now, since we don't have that feature, this rule will apply to all of the adjectives, and we'll see that. So right now it applies to all of them. So let's go back to our features and add a new feature. We'll call it superlative formation. EST. Some adjectives take the word most interested, and some adjectives will be not applicable. Okay, ableist. I would say he's the most able. Afraid. He's most afraid. He's the afraidest. No, he's the most afraid. All is not applicable. Angriest, biggest. Okay, this one will be suppletive, but it is EST, best. Happiest, hottest, hungriest, most interested. Many is not applicable. Oldest, one is not applicable. Proudest, readiest. Readiest. He is the most ready. He is the readiest. I'm going to go with most. Most ready. Reddest, same. Same is not applicable. Tall, tallest. Third is not applicable. 3 is not applicable. Truest. That's the truest thing I've heard. That's the most true thing he's ever said. Truest. I'm going to go with most. Some of these sound fine either way. Truest or most true. This is not applicable. Not applicable. If later you want to change these, you always can. So now let's go to our forms. Okay, let's set our feature in the rule. So this will only apply to the EST verbs. Okay. So now we have angriest. So we need the same morphophonemic rules and spelling rules. So let's go ahead and work on those. Let's use Grammar Wizard. Okay. Let's write the spelling rule. It changes a Y to an I. When the adjective stem ends with Y, EST, this will be for the superlative. New end of stem is I, EST. This will be in the superlative. Okay, so a Y changes to an I before an EST. Let's enter some examples. Angriest, hungriest, happiest. Okay. And, okay. Angriest, happiest, hungriest. Let's go and write another morphophonemic rule that will reduplicate the final consonant if the stem ends with CVC. Okay, Grammar Wizard can't do reduplication rules. So we double click here. Okay, this will be a morphophonemic rule. It'll apply to a suffix. The included suffix is superlative. Okay, the stem does change. We're going to reduplicate. As soon as we check the reduplication box, see how it changes down here? There's a drop list available. Reduplicate last character stem, reduplicate last 2 characters, reduplicate entire stem with a hyphen, entire stem with a space, etc. We just want to reduplicate the last character. Okay, in the stem, we want to specify the stem with phonetic features, not alphabetic characters. So again, these 5 cells represent the last 5 characters of the stem. We want this one to be a consonant, this one to be a vowel, this one to be a consonant. Okay, the suffix doesn't change. It's EST. Let's enter some examples. Biggest, reddest. Okay, angriest, biggest. Okay, this one is suppletive. Best. Now, as soon as I do this, it's a suppletive forms rule, which we can see right here. These are written for you automatically. You don't need to write them. Just make sure they're the last one in the group. Okay, best, happiest, hottest, hungriest, oldest, proudest. Okay, those look good. Let's add another rule that will add the word more, or add the word most for the superlative form. So form rules, grammar wizard can add words. We'll say add word. The word is most. Superlative. This will apply to the superlative. We want this rule to apply only to the adjectives tagged as most. Okay. Let's enter some examples. Okay. You just entered a new constituent into adjective phrases called superlatives. Remember, this was a separate word. Most was a separate word. When we add these suffixes, these are suffixes, and they will attach to the word, and so they don't need to be mentioned in the phrase structure rule, the adjective phrase structure rule. But these are separate words, so they need to be specified. Their position needs to be specified in the phrase structure rule for adjective phrases. So let's say yes, and there it is at the top with our example most. Let's drag this. It doesn't matter. Superlative and comparative, they're mutually exclusive. We'll never have both more and most modifying the same adjective. So their relative order doesn't matter. So let's put it there. Okay. Make sure that the suppletive forms rule is at the end. Okay, most afraid. And again, don't be concerned that most comes after the stem. Constituent order is always determined by the phrase structure rules. So most able, most afraid. Okay, those look good. So now we can go back and we can import that table from the Word doc. We'll put that in the next video.